Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from Kiss.
Feliz Navidad, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas from Kiss.
Ho, ho, ho! I'm wishing everybody a really Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year.
Someone stole Santa? That does not rock!
What's going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another episode of 25 Days of KISSmas, where every day leading up to KISSmas, I will be reviewing and discussing every Kiss studio album plus more. For the 14th episode, I will be reviewing the Creatures of the Night album from 1982. After the disaster of The Elder, the band knew that they had to come back to some sort of common solid ground, so in an attempt to do what they intended on doing before The Elder, and after a hazy couple of years, Kiss set about crafting their heaviest album to date and a true return to form with Creatures of the Night. With Ace trying to push the band to do an album truer to their roots since Dynasty, the various shifts in the band's sound pushed him even further to where the band was essentially working as a trio. While he does appear on the cover for contractual reasons and he participated in a European promo tour supporting the album, Ace ultimately made his exit from Kiss, and outside of tumultuous personnel changes, the band severed ties with manager Bill Aucoin, and Casablanca founder Neil Bogart would pass away. One of Creature's frequent session players and collaborators was Vincent Cusano, who had become Ace's replacement by default when rechristened to Vinnie Vincent and adapting the Egyptian Ankh warrior persona designed by Paul. So let's dig into the album. Side 1, Track 1, Creatures of the Night. A thunderous drum fill opens up the title track, which was written by Paul and Adam Mitchell, and it perfectly establishes what the band was trying to do, and that was get back to the roots, but with a slight twist of vengeance. So one can tell that the band is going for a heavier direction that was definitely going up against many of the bands that were dominating the scene at the time, such as Van Halen, Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest, just to name a few. Since the band was working as a trio at this point, there were a whole host of characters filling in the lead guitar spots on this album, and for this track, Mr. guitarist Steve Ferris plays the guitar solo, and even co-writer Adam Mitchell played some guitar on the track as well. The song was released as a single in the UK, and it is a fantastic album / show opener, and it was even revived as a set opener for the Revenge Tour some 10 years later after it originally came out. Track 2, Saint and Sinner. This marks a collaboration between Gene and Michael Japp, who had worked with Paul on his 1978 solo album, and this track provides one of Gene's more soaring and menacing vocals. Track 3, Keep Me Comin'. This is another Paul and Adam Mitchell track, and one that perfectly demonstrates the bombastic Eric Carr drum sound that adds to this album's heavy edge, almost coming across as very John Bonham-like. This was also another one of the small handful of tracks that was performed early during the Creatures tour, but by 1983, it had disappeared from the set. Track 4, Rock and Roll Hell. This song is technically a cover of a song that appeared on the Bachman-Turner Overdrive album Rock and Roll Nights, and the song was written by the album's producer Jim Vallance in 1979. Flash forward to early 1982, he and Bryan Adams reworked the song to give it a bit of a heavier edge, then they gave it to producer Michael James Jackson to be considered for Kiss to record. The band were pleased with the material, but under the one condition that Gene wrote an additional verse, which could have been his ploy to get a co-writer credit, thus a share in the royalties, and his contributions were merely minimal. Robin Ford plays the guitar solo on this track, and Jimmy Haslett plays bass. And just to tie it in all into Kisstory, Jimmy played bass in a band called Blackjack, which also featured future Kiss guitarist Bruce Kulick. Along with Keep Me Comin', this was another track that didn't survive long in the live set during the Creatures tour. Track 5, Danger. This is another Paul and Adam Mitchell track, and it's one that the band was very excited about, given its heavy nature, a powerful soaring vocal from Paul, Eric's killer drum part that matched the intensity of the original demo. This is another track that Jimmy Haslett plays bass on, and the lead guitar work was done by Bob Kulick. Now we're going to flip the album over to side 2, track 6, I Love It Loud. This is Gene and Vinny's earliest collaboration, and it was originally built around a song that Vinny had called Loud and Proud, and Gene came up with a chant that automatically became the song's hook. The song would ultimately become one of Kiss's defining anthems, and it was also released as a single, which would be Gene's last Kiss single A-side for a good 10 years. The music video does feature Ace, yet Paul appears on camera playing the simple 7-note guitar solo played by Vinny on the record, and the video also recreates the aura of the Creatures album cover, with teenagers being hypnotized by the band's performance and their eyes glowing. Track 7, I Still Love You. This is a collaboration between Paul and Vinny, and another song with Robin Ford playing the lead guitar solo and Eric Carr also playing bass. While this song tells a tale of romance, its overall dark tone makes this one of Kiss's heaviest ballads and a bit of a concert staple for several years to come. Now, it goes without mentioning that this song has some rather speculative autobiographical lyrics from Paul, given his involvement with actress Donna Dixon. Track 8, Killer. Here is another Gene and Vinny collaboration that came about early on during Vinny's involvement in Kiss. He had the original idea, and Gene added some embellishments, and the track grew as the band was recording the album. It is worth pointing out that the song was released as a single in the UK, with a unique picture sleeve that included Gene on the cover with a pull-out tongue. Track 9, War Machine. This is another track that was initially written by Jim Vallance and Bryan Adams that was submitted to be considered for Kiss to record, and just like what Gene had done with Rock and Roll Hell, he earned a co-writer's credit and made some more substantial contributions to this track compared to Rock and Roll Hell, and basically reworked the original demo, which was rather repetitive with the main riff of the song, to a more concise arrangement. This song, along with I Love It Loud, has gone on to become a steady concert staple. As for where this album stands in my Kiss catalog ranking, I would put Creatures of the Night at the number 7 spot. This is just a flat-out, ballsy album that brought the band back into comfortable and familiar ground, almost coming across as metal, to which Creatures can be seen as one of the band's heaviest and also best albums. This album should have come out after the Poppy Unmasked, since the band promised a hard rock album, and then they did The Elder. That flopped, and they realized that they had to get back to solid form, and sure enough, they did with this album. But the sad thing is that their audience was certainly lost given the shifts in the band's direction, and I'm sure there was apprehension on the fans' end when this album came out, and perhaps that contributed to the album not being as commercially successful as it should have been, and I often wonder how this album would have fared out if the band had taken off the makeup at this point, which is something that we are bound to tackle on with the next episode of this series, but nevertheless, it's an absolute masterpiece of an album. So there you guys go. That is the 14th episode of the 25 Days of KISSmas series. Stay tuned tomorrow for the 15th episode, and you can already guess what comes next. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.
Treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow.